It was a Tuesday in October 1986. The Torrance Dojo occupied a converted warehouse on Catalina Avenue, the kind of place that does not announce itself. Cinder block walls painted institutional gray, 6 overhead lights, 3 of them burned out. The concrete floor had been sealed in 1979 and never resealed. 234 square feet, according to the lease. On this particular afternoon, in front of 14 people, it became the stage for something neither the owner nor the military man walking through the door understood he was about to witness. The challenger's name was Colonel Marcus Reeves. 47 years old, 6'2", 198 pounds, distributed with the precision of a man who had spent 23 years in the United States Marine Corps, the last 6 as an unarmed combat instructor at Camp Lejeune. His credentials were legitimate, 240 hand-to-hand combat certifications issued under his signature, a record of 47 wrestling matches, 46 won, 1 drawn. He had taught tactics to 5 separate special operations units. He was not a challenger manufactured by ignorance or ego. He was credentialed, dangerous, and he carried with him the conviction that military science and martial arts were not equivalent categories. One taught men to survive. One taught men to perform. He had come to the Torrance Dojo on a Tuesday in October because his youngest son trained there 3 times a week, and because on the telephone, the boy had mentioned that an older man sometimes dropped in for private sessions. The boy had not said the name. The man had not asked it. But when Reeves arrived and saw the photograph on the wall behind the front desk, Chuck Norris in a 3-point stance, dated 1972, his chest had tightened with a specific sensation. Not anger. Recognition. The recognition of a man who has finally located the opponent he has been looking for without knowing his name. In the next 8 seconds, the military man would say something that he would spend the remainder of his life wishing he could reclaim. The scenario unfolded with the precision of something orchestrated by forces neither participant could control. Chuck Norris was in the studio that afternoon. He often was on Tuesdays. He stood alone in the rear corner, working through a series of pivot drills. The kind of work that looks like nothing to a stranger, but contains within it the entire architecture of distance. His hair had begun to gray. His frame had begun to narrow in the way that comes to men in their mid-40s who do the work and do not speak about it. He wore a white t-shirt that had absorbed the sweat of 4 decades of practice. His shoulders did not look broad. His hands did not look dangerous. His eyes did not announce themselves. Nobody in that dojo except the owner knew they were about to witness the specific instant when 23 years of certainty would collapse into 4.5 seconds of time. Colonel Reeves approached the owner and introduced himself. The introduction was cordial, the intention was not. He gestured toward the rear corner and asked, in the tone a man uses to make a point on a telephone, whether Chuck Norris still maintained an active practice, or whether the photograph on the wall was historical. The owner's face underwent a small reorganization. He said nothing. He simply looked at the military man and then looked back at Chuck, who was now aware that something had shifted in the room's pressure. Chuck set down the training dummy he was holding. He walked toward the center of the floor with the unhurried pace of a man who has already made a decision and is simply allowing time to catch up to it. He was not angry. Anger requires an elevation of feeling he had learned to dispense with decades ago. What moved through him instead was something older. The recognition of a pattern that had repeated itself so many times that it had become almost ritually predictable. Reeves was waiting. His posture was military, feet planted, weight distributed, frame square. He had trained men to hurt each other. He had never been taught that training and experience occupy separate categories. He had never been forced to learn the difference. The boy working the front desk stopped moving. The owner's hand had gone flat on the counter beside the register. 3 of the students who had been practicing in the north corner had begun to sense that something was relocating itself away from routine. And then Chuck Norris spoke. His voice was quiet. It did not carry. Men had to lean toward it to hear it, which meant the room had to lean. He said, "Let us find out. 3 words, the specific weight of them hung in the air like the dust particles floating through the broken light fixtures. The words themselves were a door that only swung one direction. Reeves moved first. He was a professional. He understood the geometry of an attack. At the moment he committed to a forward stance. Everything he thought he knew about advantage began to dissolve. Chuck had not moved his feet. What had moved instead was his awareness, the invisible adjustment of his weight that made every incoming angle obsolete before it arrived. Reeves's first technique was a straight right hand delivered from a fully committed chamber. It was the kind of strike that, if it landed clean, would end a conflict with the authority it was meant to carry. Second one. The strike arrived at the place where Chuck had been. Chuck was no longer there. The specific precision of this was not luck. It was reading written into the nervous system through decades of repetition. Reeves' momentum carried him forward by 6 inches, and in those 6 inches, his entire frame became what military men call exposed. He did not understand yet. He was still operating from his training, still believing that repetition of fundamentals would overcome whatever uncertainty lived in his opponent. He was wrong. Second 2. The colonel pivoted and reset his stance. His footwork was exact. His weight transfer was textbook. His second technique was a spinning back fist, a technique designed to capitalize on an opponent's natural instinct to cover the center line. It was the kind of move that works. It works in wrestling. It works against students. It works until it encounters someone who has been studying the question of distance for longer than the military man has been alive. The distance lesson was not taught in words. It was taught in the small adjustment of Chuck's shoulder. A fight is not 2 men hitting each other. A fight is a negotiation about distance. It is a conversation between 2 nervous systems about what is possible and what is not. Reeves was still speaking in the language of force. Chuck was fluent in the language of space. When the spinning back fist arrived, it arrived in a place that Chuck had abandoned before the motion began. The colonel felt his weight swing him past the target, felt the specific emptiness of the arc, and understood for the first time that something was structurally wrong with his understanding of what was happening. This was the moment he should have stopped. The fork in the road had appeared, but he was military trained. He did not accept correction easily. He had never been corrected by anything except time and consequence, and he did not believe those applied to him. Second 3. He reset again. His breath was beginning to change. What had felt like the first 90 seconds of a conversation was already beginning to feel like something he was not in control of. His third technique was a deliberate choice, a leg sweep designed to eliminate distance entirely by removing his opponent's foundation. It was a powerful choice. It was also the final choice he would make in this encounter. And then it was over. In the literature that would follow, in the stories the 3 students in the corner would tell their instructors, which those instructors would tell their students, which would branch and compound and grow, there would be 7 different accounts of what the finishing move actually was. Some said it was a shin strike. Some said it was a straight right hand. Some said it was a technique that had no name because no one had ever recorded it in training because it moved too fast. The only thing the witnesses agreed on was that it happened in the moment between intention and execution. It happened in the space between what Reeves was planning and what his body was capable of doing. The strike came from a source of power that was not visible in Chuck's stance. The mechanics were so economical that they looked like nothing. The impact was profound enough that Reeves dropped to one knee. He did not go down on both knees. He went down on the right one, his hands seeking the floor to stabilize himself. His breathing had become ragged. His certainty had become a specific kind of absence. And then Chuck did something that no one in the room expected, not even the owner, who had trained with him for 15 years. He extended his hand to the military man. Not with a gesture of victory, not with a gesture of superiority, with something older than either of those things. With the gesture of a man offering another man the chance to stand. Reeves looked at the hand for a moment that contained its own small duration. The boy at the front desk had frozen. One of the students had stopped breathing. The owner stood motionless, his hands still flat on the counter. The military man reached up and accepted the help. He came to his feet slowly. His balance was imperfect. His dignity was intact. And then, In a voice that could be heard only by Chuck, Colonel Marcus Reeves said something that he would repeat, word, for the remainder of his life, always as an explanation that required no elaboration. He said, "I apologize. I was wrong about what you are." He said it once. He did not say it again. It was enough. He walked to the corner where his son was training. He spoke to the boy for a moment, words that nobody else heard, and nobody asked about. Then he left the dojo and drove back to the base. He did not speak about what had happened for 3 days. On the 4th day, he called the owner and asked permission to bring 6 Marines to train there once a week. The owner said yes. Reeves asked if Chuck Norris would be present. The owner said, "Some days." Reeves said, "That is sufficient." The story moved differently than most stories move. It didn't spread through the martial arts world first. It didn't become legend through the typical mechanisms of ego and exaggeration. It moved instead through the quiet channels. Through 6 Marines who trained at the Torrance dojo and told 6 other Marines. Through the boy who had initiated everything without knowing he was doing so, and who would later bring his own son to train at the same dojo, in the same corner where on a Tuesday afternoon in October, the certainty of one man had been dissolved by the patience of another. 20 years later, Reeves would be promoted to general. He would oversee hand-to-hand combat training for 8 separate commands. He would implement new methodology that emphasized not the speed of the strike but the reading of distance before the strike was thrown. His instructors would ask him where the system came from. He would not tell them the full story. He would only say, "I learned it from a man who does not believe that speed and power are the only components of victory. The man teaches that you must know what is about to happen before it happens." That changes everything. The photograph on the wall at the Torrance dojo aged, the frame yellowed, the edges of the image became soft with time. In 1994, the dojo moved to a larger space. Someone packed the photograph in a box. It sat in a storage closet for 12 years. When it was finally unpacked and hung again, nobody commented on it. But there were 6 men training in that new dojo who knew exactly what that photograph represented, and they trained differently because of it. The military man and the martial artist never had a second encounter. They did not need one. What had been said was complete. What had been proven required no repetition. Years later, when an interviewer asked Chuck Norris about the specific confrontation, because word had traveled, because even quiet stories eventually surface in the form of a question, Chuck paused for a moment before answering. He said, "The best moment in that exchange was not the encounter itself. It was the moment when a trained professional recognized that his training and his wisdom were 2 separate categories. That recognition was worth more than 1,000 victories." This is the particular power of that Tuesday in October. It was not the speed of the technique, it was not the impact of the strike. It was the moment when a man understood that everything he knew could still be incomplete. It was the moment when a military instructor, credentialed, experienced, certain, chose to apologize instead of justify. It was the moment when respect moved in a different direction than anyone expected it to move. The lesson was not taught with words. It was written in the specific silence of the Torrance dojo, in the way a hand extended and was accepted, in the way a man walked back to his son and said something that nobody else heard but everyone understood had shifted something permanent inside him. Stay subscribed to see what happened when another legend came looking for the same answer and found something entirely different.